The rain pounded against the glass windows like an endless drumbeat, each drop echoing the emptiness in Evelyn's heart. She stood at the edge of the long, cold marble hallway, clutching the framed photo of her mother. Her hands trembled, not from the chill in the air, but from the words she'd just heard from her father, the man she once believed was her safe place. Evelyn, his voice had been calm, almost businesslike. It's time you choose a new mother. The world tilted. Her breath caught in her throat. He wasn't asking out of love or concern. He was offering her 5 wealthy, polished strangers to pick from, as if her mother's place could be filled like a vacancy in one of his companies. Evelyn wanted to scream, but her voice dissolved into the rain outside. Evelyn's father, Richard Caldwell, was a man of influence, money, and sharp decisions. But when it came to emotions, he was a fortress of stone. After her mother's death 2 years ago, Evelyn had clung to the belief that he would soften, that grief would make him human. Instead, it seemed to make him colder. On a rainy Saturday, Richard called her into his study. The smell of expensive cigars and leather-bound books filled the air. Lined up in the room were 5 women, all dressed in immaculate designer dresses, smiling with rehearsed warmth. They were beautiful, successful, and strangers. Richard stood behind his massive mahogany desk. "Evelyn," he said without hesitation, "these are 5 extraordinary women. I want you to pick one as your new mother. It's time we bring stability back into this house." The words made her chest ache. Stability? Was that what her mother had been? An employee in his perfect life plan? Evelyn scanned the faces before her. They were lovely, but none of them had the eyes of someone who would kneel on the kitchen floor to clean up spilled cocoa at midnight, or wrap her in a blanket when nightmares made her shake. She shook her head. "I don't need a new mother," she whispered, but her father's jaw tightened. Days passed, and the weight of the decision hung over her like a storm cloud. She wandered through the mansion's hallways, avoiding her father and the women, until one quiet morning, her footsteps led her to the back of the house, to the small, warm-smelling laundry room. There, bent over a basket of clothes, was Mrs. Grace Williams, the housekeeper. Her dark skin glowed under the sunlight streaming in from the window, and her hands moved with a gentleness Evelyn hadn't seen in months. Grace looked up, her eyes holding something the others lacked, genuine kindness. "You've been crying again," Grace said softly, handing her a warm towel as if it were a shield against the world. No judgment, no pressure, just warmth. Evelyn found herself speaking, really speaking, for the first time since her father's proposal. She told Grace about her mother, about the ache in her chest, about feeling invisible in her own home. Grace listened without interrupting, her quiet "mm"s wrapping around Evelyn like a lullaby. That night, lying in bed, Evelyn realized something. The love she missed didn't need diamonds, silk dresses, or grand gestures. It needed understanding. And Grace had that in abundance. Weeks later, Richard called another meeting. The 5 women sat poised in the sitting room, each clearly expecting the title of new Mrs. Caldwell. Evelyn's heart pounded as her father's eyes settled on her. "Well," he asked, "who will it be?" The silence stretched. Evelyn felt all their gazes, but in her mind, she saw Grace's warm smile in the laundry room, heard her steady voice in the quiet moments. She took a breath. "I've made my choice." Richard leaned forward. "Go on." Evelyn stood tall, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "I choose Grace." A ripple of shock passed through the room. One of the women laughed under her breath. Another whispered something to her neighbor. Richard's face darkened. "Evelyn, she's the housekeeper." "She's more than that," Evelyn said firmly. "She's the only one who's been here for me. Not for your money, not for your status. She's the one who's listened, cared, and made me feel safe. That's what a mother does." Richard stared at her for a long moment. Something in his eyes shifted, just slightly, but enough for Evelyn to notice. Perhaps for the first time, he saw his daughter not as a child, but as someone who understood what truly mattered. Grace, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her eyes shone. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, "I never sought this role. But if Evelyn wants me in her life that way, I'll do my best to honor her mother's memory." The room went still. Richard finally exhaled, his voice softer than Evelyn had heard in years. "If that's your choice, then so be it." From that day forward, Grace became more than just a housekeeper. She became a safe place, a reminder that family isn't built from wealth or titles, but from the quiet acts of love that hold us together when everything else falls apart. Moral of the story: true family is not defined by bloodlines or wealth, but by the people who show up, love without condition, and stand by you when you are at your weakest. Healing begins when we choose connection over appearance and love over convenience.